Ashley, I'll pass it over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this session. Want to thank the association for reaching out and inviting me to participate. I think this is going to be a great conversation. Just a little background about myself. I'm with the Illinois Credit Union League. I have served in various advocacy roles at the league for over 13 years now. So my current position is Chief Legal Officer and Senior Vice President of State Advocacy. So just working on a variety of issues, many of which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So again, I'm just really excited to dig into this advocacy conversation today. We have a wonderful lineup of panelists to talk through some questions, and we will welcome your questions as well as we engage in our conversation. So I am going to turn it over to each panelist to introduce themselves and provide a little background so you know who we're chatting with today. So, Anthony, would you like to kick that off, please?
Thank you so much, Ashley. I will kick it off. So, Anthony Ware, I'm with Illuminate, Louisiana Credit Union Association. I serve as Senior Director of Legislative Advocacy. So, I handle both state and federal, I'll say, lobbying for credit unions here in Louisiana. Been in the credit union movement over 14 years now. I started off as a part-time teller, did financial service rep, worked in our call center, did fraud and card services, managed a branch, did business and community development. So I like to say I did everything, probably but IT as well. So I have a good holistic view of the credit union movement, and that's what kind of led me over to the league side of things and being able to advocate for our credit unions. Just having a holistic perspective on our credit unions. So originally from Los Angeles, California, so I'm a West Coast kid, but reside here in the South. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Irma.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's 10 a.m. here in sunny Los Angeles, California. My name is Irma Gorosino. I currently serve as a legislative advocate for both Nevada's and California's credit unions. My role is specific to federal legislation. Prior to my role here with the Credit Union League, I served as in many different capacities. I worked in the public, nonprofit, and even in Congress. I worked for 7 years for Congresswoman Linda Sanchez, who is one of the senior ranking members, the only Latina who serves in this capacity in the Ways and Means Committee. This committee is very particular and specific to our industry needs, as it does set parameters around our financial services industry. Prior to working in Congress, for me, it's always been about serving as an advocate. I have a father who I have long time been an advocate for since he was diagnosed with stage 4 multiple myeloma breast cancer when I was 21. So early on, my experience has been working in supporting community and being able to ensure that voices are heard, and why I ended up working in Congress for as long as I did. My background, soy mexicana de orgullo. I am both a dual citizen of the great state of Jalisco and also ties here to LA. So I am both first generation and fourth generation Chicana. So thank you all.
Thank you. Adrian?
Yes. Buenos dias or buenas tardes, depending where you are. My name is Adrian Velasquez. I'm the Chief Advocacy Officer for the Cooperative Credit Union Association. The Cooperative Credit Union Association covers 4 states: Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Delaware. We have approximately 160 members all across the 4 states. In my role is to lead all our advocacy engagement, both at the federal and state, legislatively, government affairs in general, but also regulatory. The way I ended up in credit union land, my previous experience, I was a staffer in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. I worked for also for Governor Patrick, which was the first African American governor here in Massachusetts. And in my tenure during the in the Joint Committee on Financial Services in the legislature, I was working with credit unions, particularly in banks. So I was able to develop, at least on the legislative front and regulatory subject matter expertise. When I graduated from law school, I left to become a public defender because I wanted to expand my experiences, particularly in criminal justice reform. And I did work a little bit on that front, just to got pulled back to credit union where I am right now. I'm originally from San Juan, Puerto Rico, Bad Bunny land, living here in the East Coast. And I'm happy that I'm with my colleagues, doing this panel. I think it's timely and very important with everything that is happening in the nation. And credit unions issues are Latino issues in many ways. So I'm happy to start the conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. What a wide variety of experience and background we have on the panel. And I think that that's just going to make our conversation today, robust and exciting. I'm excited about it. Advocacy is so important, and it's the key to our continued success as an industry. But something I want everyone to keep in mind as we continue the conversation today is that developing the skills to be an effective advocate will help in your career, but those skills also carry over into our personal lives. So being a great advocate can really prove to be beneficial in so many different facets of your life as you face different challenges at work and at home. Irma spoke to that when she, just mentioned her father and being an advocate for her father. And so I think that, this is a skill that as we develop this skill as an individual, you're going to see how it helps you in all these other areas of your life. So I think it's just so beneficial to really think about what advocacy means to you, how you can continue to develop those skills in your career and apply them in your personal life as well. So we have several discussion points on the agenda today, several questions that we're going to walk through. I'll, allow each of the panelists to provide insight. If they've got insight on the questions we're going to ask, I will probably throw in my own perspective from time to time as well. They told me I was allowed to do that. So as I was reading through the questions, I was like, oh, I've got answers for these as well. So I think it's going to be a great conversation, and we would invite you to stay engaged by, submitting questions in the chat if you have questions as well, so that we can address those. But with that, let's go ahead and get started. Starting out, let's just focus on the role that credit unions play in supporting and protecting the credit union movement. So especially when we consider that some professionals may only interact with their leagues occasionally, some might be more engaged, but let's assume we've got people that aren't super engaged with their leagues. How would we describe the role of the league in advocacy? And I'll kick it to you.
I would say that the league serves as the intermediary between the institution that is your state house legislators, in Anthony's case, serving the state of Louisiana. In my case, I have a whole team that supports our state legislative affairs for the state of California. But also, we're the bridge builder between Congress and the United States Senate. And without us, there is no capacity to be a thorough voice for our efforts.
Yeah, I think Irma, you kind of said a key word there, being a bridge, right? So for the leagues, we are a bridge between our federal and state legislators and our credit unions. And so, kind of what role or do we have in supporting or protecting the movement is just to be able to be that conduit, I'll say, between our credit unions who may be experiencing an issue and our lawmakers ultimately who we look to have some type of legislative relief, the regulatory dialogue or legislative dialogue to be able to get those needs met, right? Because ultimately our job as credit unions, right, we're people helping people. And so our issues are the people's issues. And so our elected officials are there to serve the people. So that's how we work together and in unison between the leagues and our legislators.
Yeah, I like to echo everything that have been said about that analogy of being a bridge, because the reality is that's what we are, right? Like we connect our credit unions with policymakers, right? I also use another analogy, which is a conductor, right? Like if you have a concert conductor, it's someone that is harmonizing all different sounds, in these cases, voices, and making sure some voices are amplified, making sure that everybody is heard, making sure that that those small credit unions have a voice on the table. Because the reality is, larger credit union might have people in staff that do kind of advocacy work, but the reality is, a small one, they don't have necessarily the capacity. And in terms of bridging, I think harmonizing the different ideas and the different proposals, you come with one voice, right? And not only it is between members credit union and the league, but it is also between the league and America's credit union, for instance, or DCUC, or oftentimes, we find ourselves working together. I work a lot with Anthony and with Irma, and it is that bridge, right, between different stakeholders. And to me, it is extremely relevant, the work that the leagues or the association like ALCOP provide for the members, because the reality is it gives a voice to a conversation that otherwise many people do not have.
No, absolutely. All great points. And, to me, what I love about the industry and the role that leagues can play is that the whole process is so collaborative, and every part of the circle that sort of completes what we're able to do is really critical. So the role of the credit union professionals is absolutely critical. The role of the state leagues, and then the role on the federal level of ACU, and just being able to connect those dots. I've heard the word harmonize a lot. I love that. I think that's very accurate. Also to prioritize, there are a lot of issues going on. How do we prioritize what is next, what we need to address next for our industry? Our credit union professionals are so busy at their credit unions, right? You're there, you're serving your members. You are very focused on what you need to do to be responsive to the needs of your membership. So the league can play an important role in sort of distilling down the political environment, the threats, the opportunities that we have to make policy changes that will benefit credit unions. We know in my experience, even with credit unions that have designated employees for advocacy or governmental affairs, can't always devote all the attention to just that, right? So we hope to help in facilitating all of that, and to take some of the burden off of the credit unions, and just be able to directly feed information when it's appropriate and timely, that requires some response to help move on these policy proposals on both state and federal levels. So I think leagues play a critical role. I guess I'm biased, but I think leagues play a critical role. But that equally important is the role that the professionals in the industry are playing, and that our national counterparts play as well. All right, so moving along, from a league perspective, why is Latino representation essential to effective credit union advocacy today? I'll let you all answer, and then I'll weigh in.
No, so I'll kick this one off. So, where I made the notion, or just shared the sentiments, right? People helping people. And so, from us as a credit union perspective, why the Latino is essential, why the Latino voice is essential, is representation and inclusion. As you look across the state from coast to coast, the Latino population is growing in your state, and if it hasn't started to growing, then it's shortly here to come. And so, because we as credit unions through this lens, it's people helping people. It's not people helping some people. It's not people helping rich people. It's not people helping, just poor people. That's why the voice of the Latino matters, is because in order for us to really have a holistic view of what we're advocating for, everybody has to have a seat at that table, and everybody's voice has to be heard. As Adrian said, some voices may get amplified, and some, we may need to quiet a little bit. But at the end of the day, everybody's voice deserves to get heard, and we can't move forward as an industry if we don't have the Latino voice at the table. I know some of you all may be wondering, this African American guy, why is he on the Latino call, right? But my grandmother is from Guatemala. My grandfather is from Belize. So those things shape me, right? The Latino part of me shaped me into who I am today. And I can't say that our industry will be better off if the Latino voice isn't at the table, and this world wouldn't be better without the Latino voice at the table.
I want to emphasize that message, Anthony, because for me, being an outsider coming into the industry, being new, I almost see it as a bubble. And the reason why I see it as a bubble is because it can be very antiquated and it can be very dated to where it's not culturally competent or even relevant. If there is a credit union that is serving a predominantly Hispanic community, there isn't always the willingness or understanding to want to bridge that gap and be out in community. And so that's something that I recognize, at least for California, majority of my congressional delegation and even my Senate member, right, is a Latino, one of the few that serves in the United States Senate. And so for us, it goes hand in hand with our legislative strategy, how we engage, what we talk about, the importance of emphasizing that in the financial services industry, we are one of the few that provides ITIN lending support, right? That is a contentious topic at this time. And I believe that, without carrying us through based in the fact that we are the largest growing population, right? What is it now? 1 in 3 in Gen Z is now a Latino. And I mean, it's very stark and a disheartening reminder that there is a reason why in an election year, there is an administration that is ostracizing our community in plain sight.
Um, I on my end, I echo everything that Anthony and Irma said. They're completely 100% correct. My experience in the Northeast is a little bit different, right? I don't represent necessarily states with large Latino community. So for me, the way I see it, why is important is because number one, movement, right? This is a movement that started by immigrant women, which most people do not know. But the reality is French Canadian women moving to the Northeast, particularly in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, started the credit union movement in the United States. And if you transpond that to the future where we are right now, who are the most affected immigrant communities? But it is also to a point that Irma mentioned, market conditions, right? As a movement, we started because of market failure, right? Immigrant French Canadian women did not have access to financial services. And at the same time, we still have people that are not being served. So responding to those market conditions extremely important. And who is the community that is growing the fastest? Is the Latino community. Now, within advocacy, there is another layer and another element, which is look at the rapid increment of Latino elected officials across the country. I take, for example, a small state, Rhode Island, one of my states. I was having a conversation yesterday in one of the hearings with a state senator. She's Colombian, and we're talking about fraud. And my lens was, and I know we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but my lens was, what is the impact that fraud is having in our viejitos, in our elderly population, right? And trying to convey um, that narrative, right, that she's familiar to help the whole industry. So it is fundamental that we amplify the Latino community while we do this kind of work, because it is also about the future. It is also about the continuation of the movement. It is about the communities that are growing, not only in terms of the market, but also politically.
No, absolutely. You all have covered that well. I think that there's nothing I can add to what's already been said that you guys didn't cover. So I appreciate that. And, I think that it is so important to have unique voices as we advocate, to be sure that we are all representing, the constituents that comprise the credit union membership, right? And the Latino voice is just extremely important in that regard. I know here in Illinois, we've had good success partnering, for example, with Hispanic chamber groups. We've got a strong contingency of Latino representatives here in Illinois, and being able to connect them with the credit unions that are serving that population so they can hear directly about, how we are meeting the needs of members is just really critical to help telling our story, to help legislators understand that credit unions are stepping in where there is need, and we're meeting that need, and we need to continue working to do so. So thank you for those responses. Where do you see the biggest disconnect between what Latino communities need and the advocacy work that's happening today? And how can credit unions step in and help bridge that gap?
So I think we kind of hit on it, and even in the last question as we were answering it, right? I think Irma talked about the point of I-10 lending. So one, we help bridge the gap first by giving a seat to the table, right? Giving a voice, to the issues, to the problems, right? I-10 lending, like you said, in Rhode Island, may not be as big of an issue as it is in California, but without that voice, the California voice, the whole landscape, the whole nation doesn't move forward as a whole. And so that's where you really see the bridge being built, is between the community and the financial institutions. I think I just saw someone put in the chat, that there's a big distrust, right, between Latino communities and financial institutions. I would go a little bit further and say there's distrust between minorities and financial institutions. But what helps to subside that distrust is us having a voice at the table. If you know that you're playing an active role in not only policies but legislation, because that's the only way that things stay the moving forward, right? Because a policy can be here today and gone tomorrow, but legislation, when it's on the books, it has a more downstream impact, for future generations. So the more gains that we have legislatively, from a Latino perspective, from a minority perspective, the better off this nation will be. And credit unions are the ones who give those seats at the table to help amplify the voices of the community that has that distrust towards, we're looking through the uh financial lens, but I would broaden it open and say that we have an impact on the whole, but just through the financial lens. So that's how we help bridge the gap as credit unions.
I will add the other layer in adding in bridging that gap is being able to work with partners like Inclusive, who designate the Juntos Avanzamos certification, who provide that arm to be the advocate on CDFI support as well. Adrian and I recently had the opportunity to participate in a visit with cooperativos in Puerto Rico. And for me, being new to this space, it was very much grounding and a reminder of my why. Because oftentimes we only see what we know in our immediate surroundings, and we're left to sort of forget and not recognize the nuance that comes with a U.S. territory, deemed territory, right? And the grappling challenges, but also the lifeline that the CDFI becomes in the case of recovery for Hurricane Maria and other um, disasters that end up occurring. And so that I think with the partnership with Juntos Avanzamos, there is that added support with being able to partner with consulates. We have an amazing credit union in my state of California and Nevada. It's called Rise Credit Union. And we have a partner there. This credit union in particular has a partnership with the Mexican consulate to be able to offer support around financial literacy and familiarity when it comes to banking. And so being at the helm and being that support, I think is sort of what kind of helps demystify and help sort of bring folks in.
Yeah, I think market share conditions, right? If you ask credit union CEO what is their strategy to grow their business, right? Their field of membership. A lot of them would like to engage the Latino community, but perhaps they don't know how to, right? So again, it's the community that is growing. It is a community of the future. It's a community that many of the people that are attending here are going to be the next generation of leaders leading this institution. And I think what is important is to remind ourselves that this is not only unique to the Latino community. There has been different wave of immigrant community that have adapted. The question is, how do we bridge that gap? Whether that is, making sure that people understand our services, making sure that we're actually showing up in our community, as Irma was saying, making sure that people trust us. And in order for people to trust us, they need to see the work, right? So it is fundamental that we do that introspection in in understanding the need of the Latino community and also provide services. Anthony was alluding to a perfect case, IT lending, right? That's one that resonates a lot in our community. There are others. In my case, I think fraud should be at the table because a lot of, our viejitos, our elderly population, is very vulnerable to the gimmicks and the tricks of the fraudster, and we want to make sure that they are protected, right? They work for, they fought for us for being here, right? And we want to make sure that nobody's taking advantage of them. So understanding the needs of the community, I think it's crucial, not only for market adaptability and growth, but also for the continuation of the movement, as I was alluding earlier today.
Yep, I completely agree. And I think an important theme that I'm hearing from the panel and that comes to mind is just meeting people where they are. So finding out where is this community? What are the needs? What are the different perspectives? And one of those perspectives was raised in the chat. Financial institutions are not widely trusted within the Latino community. If that's the baseline from which we are starting, how do we build trust? How do we get past, the hurdles or the mindset that might make individuals hesitant? I think a big part of that is education. And I think that when we talk about credit union education, we have such opportunity to tell a wonderful story about what our movement is and does for people. We are people helping people. So no matter where you are in life or in your financial journey, a credit union has that unique ability to meet members where they are, to address concerns, to correct where there may be mistrust, to build relationships. And, I think that we are uniquely situated. We're not just run-of-the-mill financial institutions. We are more personable than that. And we need to educate the communities on how we are different and how we can meet them where we're at. And so I think we do a good job of that. I always think we can continue doing more education, right? We always have new individuals coming into the movement that might not be as familiar with our history. We have new lawmakers, that might be unfamiliar with what we do and with how we serve communities. So in my opinion, there's never too much education about what we do and who we are, because I think that helps serve the general public in learning more about the industry. It helps us in our advocacy efforts because it helps lawmakers understand how we are meeting the needs of their constituents. And that's a success, or a part of a successful advocacy effort, is demonstrating how we are meeting the needs of constituents in our respective states.
Yeah, and it also too, actually, what it does is it reminds us who we are, in addition to, so as much as we are educating everyone else, sometimes, credit unions, quote unquote, may get too large or may get over their skis in some way. So it is good for us to kind of have that reminder of, like you said, where we started from, who we actually serve, and what is the work that we're truly doing. It's not just to, grow our asset size, to be competitive to the next financial institution, but like you said, it's that people helping people and serving the underserved.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Anthony. I think that's one of the things that people in this industry do appreciate, is those moments, those opportunities to just sort of reflect on who we are as an industry, why we are this way. And I think when you do that, you come away with a greater appreciation for the roles that we all play, whatever role you're playing in the industry. Certainly after that reflection, you walk away feeling good about what we're doing, and we need to make sure that others know that, we are all in this together. That's something I love about our industry. So kind of parlaying that into a little bit more specific conversation, if we have more to add to this, talking about specific policy issues that credit union professionals should be paying close attention to, and specifically relevant to this conversation, what issues are you seeing that might disproportionately impact Latino members, things that individuals on this call should really be paying attention to?
I would say that if there is the capability to understand and know the importance of voting, on the congressional side, that is a paramount. Being able to recognize and know if you reside in, I don't know, we'll say the state of Nevada in my case, I have a long-term Republican, Congressman Amade, that is terming out, and there are a significant amount of individuals running for that seat. If there is a credit union servicing that area, being familiar and knowing who is running in that region, it is a critical state. And so I look at it from that perspective. If folks have the privilege to be able to vote, I can't emphasize that enough because it is an election year.
Yeah, I remember you kind of hit the nail on the head. So you need to be paying attention to the SAVE Act. So that's a piece of legislation that's moving through Congress. It's dealing with just what Irma said, dealing with I'll say voter access. So, it's talking about, documentation needing to be able to vote, to be registered, to get IDs, things of that nature, birth certificates, things of that nature that may not be accessible to some of us, or maybe have more of a challenge to kind of locate those items. But that is one piece of legislation I would say look at. SAVE Act. Adrian talked about fraud, so there's a TRAPS Act, task force on fraud. I think, yeah, fraud is going to be one of the biggest issues I think coming up. After they kind of get through the weeds of Congress. So those two pieces of legislation, I would say for sure. Oh, and a credit card competition act, I would say as well, because that's looking at access. So when you look at interchange, if how that changed, Ashley knows all too well, just even on the state side of interchange, if we start to mess with the payment system, that's gonna have a disruption on who has access, or who's afforded access to financial services, and not more often than not, the ones that'll be left out are the ones who actually need it the most when it comes to that. So SAVE Act, TRAPS Act, and Credit Card Competition Act, I think will say will be my three.
Yeah, I agree with those. I would add HR1. I think HR1 in terms of education opportunities for Latinos is going to be um, very consequential, to be kind, using my words. The reality is that I'm a big believer in education. I think a path forward for all of us is educating ourselves, and that doesn't mean that it has to be institutional, right? But it means that ability of learning new things. Unfortunately, most of the learning that happened, through the way that the economy is shaped is through higher education, and HR1 is going to have significant impact, particularly for graduate school, for those that are deciding to go beyond college, right? Which I think it's if you look at every industry, Latinos are underrepresented, and this is just going to make it even harder for Latinos to achieve higher level of education. So for me, that's on the macro level. The one that is omnipresent, immigration, particularly from the credit union perspective, what kind of solutions can we provide? When I was in California, I talk about custodial accounts and trust accounts as a way to mitigate the disruption for those that have been affected in terms of membership. Having an ability to have estate planning within our community, and provide some guidance to the credit union on how to make a disposition of their property. I think that's crucial, and that's something that I like to see more credit unions stepping up. But the reality is that there are so many issues, and it's because this landscape is changing every day. I was just talking to a district director for one of our congressional offices, and I'm talking about we were talking about the hardship loans that we're providing, for the TSA employee and the Coast Guard, and how does that affect? I mean, if at least in my area, right, if you go and look at who are the TSA employees, many of them happen to be Latinos, right? And this is an issue that indirectly impact not only that person, but also their family, and by extend their community. So a lot of issues. I'm big on fraud just because of the disruption that can cause in terms of your finances, and because it's relevant to the credit union industry. But Going back to Irma's point, I think it is fundamental that we as a community, as a deliver as an institution that deliver for the American dream, understand how important the vote is and how crucial it is for our institution to engage in voter registration, in trying to make sure that there is a high participation, particularly at the local level, which is the area that has most impact to our community. I mean, credit unions are democratic institutions to begin with, and fundamentally, if we can express and convey those values to our members and encourage them to abide to those values, it's gonna be a win for everybody, particularly for the nation. As I mentioned before, we are the community that is growing. So, yeah, that's my take.
Oh, that's great. That's a lot of really good information. I hope you're all taking notes on all those specific areas that that our panelists suggest paying attention to. But it is so important. There's so much going on. But again, you know, your leagues are resources for you to help understand all of these issues. So we're raising a lot of things and saying, you know, you all should be paying attention to all these different issues. There's also a lot of resources and just individuals that are willing to help. So if you come across something that really stands out to you as an issue that is important, you know, no one's expecting you to be an expert right out of the gate. But just as long as you know where your resources are to, you know, to learn more, to take next steps. If you want to take action, how do you do that, right? There are so many good resources out there to be able to do that. So, you know, learning the issues is just a step in the process, and then that'll open the door to so much more as well. But just briefly, two state level issues that I wanted to add to this list on our specific issues here. Obviously, one is interchange. I'm always going to give an interchange plug. I don't think I can have a conversation without talking about interchange lately. But this is really in my wheelhouse. But I think it's so important that everyone is paying attention to what's happening, because what's happened in Illinois is bleeding throughout the country. And so I think that we just all need to be cognizant that, you know, if your state has not had an interchange bill yet, you likely will. And just a level set, I just want to spend a minute to just talk about like what that means and what the threats are, because I think people hear the word interchange a lot lately. They hear the phrase swipe fees a lot. But what does that really mean? When we say interchange is coming to your state, what does that mean? What it means is that retailers are shopping specific restrictions on the collection of interchange. Interchange is the revenue that is generated when cards are used. When someone chooses to pay with a card, interchange fees are what the financial institutions receive for processing electronic transactions. That process is not free. There's a whole infrastructure behind the processing of interchange that does come at great expense, but also included in that is fraud protection. So as we're talking about fraud, we need to be mindful that interchange funds fraud protection. So there's that's a great relation there between those two issues. The Illinois bill that passed said that interchange could not be collected on the tax and tip part of a transaction. So it reduces the interchange that can be collected by financial institutions. The other thing that the bill in Illinois does is it restricts how financial institutions can use consumer data from their electronic transactions. So we use that information, not in bad ways. We use that information to be able to flag what we think might be fraudulent activity, right? We understand what your spending habits are. And when we see something outside of the norm, we're able to say, hey, looks like this might not be you. You know, we've all received those text messages, I think, before that are like confirming this is, you know, your transaction. And so it helps us to be able to stop fraud on the front end before it even goes through, before the money leaves someone's account. It helps us to flag that. Also helps us to do things like track rewards, right? So if you have a card that offers rewards, obviously your spending needs to be tracked in order to generate those rewards. So there's consumer benefit there. So when we talk about not being able to use information the way we use it today, it does have an impact on consumers. So that's my plug on interchange. I just think we all need to be mindful because, like I said, if it hasn't come to your state yet, it's coming, I promise. It's
Actually,
all,
very, very quick to that
yeah.
point of his coming, and I think Christopher Burgos from New Mexico is also here. Last August at NCLS here in Boston, that was 50 years. We had a conversation with the some members of the coalition. Guess what? Interchange appeared in Puerto Rico of all the places, right? I happen to be from there. But the point is that we were able to triangulate, right, and delineate a strategy because the other side is trying everywhere, right? Right now, I have three active interchange bill: Massachusetts, Rhode Island. I was just testifying yesterday in down in Rhode Island and Delaware. And they're trying very hard, and that's in addition to what's happening at the national level. So the question is, how does this affect our work in credit unions and to the extent the Latino community? This is why I'm so big on the issue of fraud, because that is how it's gonna, those fraud protections, if this passes, many of them are gonna go away because this is the way that we can fund some of many of our programs, but also all the community relations events that we have, right? Like with our credit union, the way that, our credit unions engage. I mean, that has to be funded somehow. And many of the funding actually come through interchange. So at least we know where that money is going, right? So just wanted to plug in that for Ashley. Ashley is doing an excellent work for the whole system. She's holding the line. And unfortunately, a lot of the things are being tested in Illinois. But she has been great at communicating, their strategy, what is working, what is not working, so that the rest of us, Irma, Anthony, myself, Christopher, and others are aware of what's coming in other states. So thank you, Ashley, for leading that effort.
No, you're
Yes.
welcome.
And one thing I add, Adrian, you kind of went down, I'll say down the path, right? When we talk about what's done with interchange, like you said, just from the community development aspect and the products and services that credit unions provide from that interchange. So when I make the point of it's going to limit access, if those if the you have to have, money has to come from somewhere, right?
Right.
These services aren't free, that we as credit unions provide at no cost or low cost. It's because, like you said, of interchange, that we are able to do those things. The other thing is when you look at what happened in Illinois, it was tagged on to the back of a bill, kind of at the last minute, right? So when we talk about what role does credit union leagues play in supporting and protecting the movement, it's literally this conversation right here. It's being aware of the issues, is knowing who the players are in at key times and with key I'll say legislative instruments, and then ultimately being able to educate our members and educate their legislators on these issues and the downstream impact that they'll be able to have. So it's a two-way thing. I always tell my team, advocacy never sleeps, and literally it can't, because of, like I said, you have something what happened and transpired in Illinois. I mean, we can look at Colorado, what happened with Colorado's interchange. I mean, where you have a member, elected to, who's sitting on a board, and they take him off, take that person off to pass the legislation and then put him back on the next day. And so it's these type of things that credit unions have to be aware of. It's these things that your leagues representatives are being made aware of and actively advocating. Like I said, many times when some of our other members are in bed, sleeping with their families, that's the sacrifice that we all make, not only for ourselves, but for the movement as a whole.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, these interchange bills, they will sneak up on you in the middle of the night, I promise. We experienced it. It does. And then these important issues, they just kick off this instinct to fight back. And it is a 24/7 job. You just can't step away from it. You have to keep pressure on to address these issues, preferably as they come up. Here in Illinois, we're battling this now after it's passed, just because of the dynamics of how it passed into law in a strange way. So we always have to be sort of on guard and mindful of what might be coming next. So appreciate that information. One last thing on interchange that I'll say is our Illinois interchange law impacts any transaction that happens in Illinois. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, that Illinois situation sounds terrible, I'm so glad I'm not in Illinois, but it still might affect your credit union. Because if you have anyone that has a card that comes through O'Hare and buys a coffee, all of a sudden this Illinois law impacts you. And so I think we need to be doing a better job of communicating the impacts of the Illinois law outside of the state of Illinois, because everyone really should be very concerned about, first of all, the precedent that the Illinois law sets, but then also the impact to anyone that has a cardholder that might visit Illinois. And with the city of Chicago, we know we get visitors, every day from all over the world. And so everyone really should be paying close attention to what's happening here. The one other state level issue that I want to address real quick. Sorry, did you want to say something else on interchange? Go ahead, please.
Sorry, not necessarily on interchange, but
Okay.
if you're still on the topic, we do have an anonymous question that I wanted to pose to you all.
Sure.
Okay, so there is a lot about state level politics that I am not sure if I properly understand. How can we navigate a push to support state level representatives that advocate for credit unions but do not align with my ethics or humanity? So for example, from a celebratory internal email from last year, Congress passed H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and President Trump signed it into law on July 4th. And with this final act, the credit union federal income tax exemption has been preserved. So again, the question is, how can we navigate a push to support state level reps that advocate for credit unions, but that don't necessarily align with our humanity or ethics?
Well, I'll just say that's part of the job for us. I mean, no, I say it tongue in cheek, but that's kind of the balancing act. I'll use here in state, as well. Like there was a representative that we worked with, who passed a credit union friendly bill, but then at the same time passed something, when it comes to I'll say the death penalty, that personally may not have aligned with me, and so it's kind of we have to kind of take off our personal hat. I'll say when it comes into this, right? It's always about the industry and about the movement. And so it is a delicate game, and I will say that's why everyone can't do this.
Right.
Everyone can't do this because some people can't turn it off and just deal with what the issue is, from a professional standpoint, because it bleeds into my personal side. So there is no perfect science to it. If there is one, I welcome it. If someone has it to share, but there isn't no perfect there isn't a perfect science to this. It's just something either that you get or you don't get.
If I may, I think the way I approach that kind of work comes from my previous experience as a criminal defense attorney, which is you are making a commitment to the system and not necessarily to the person, which is which is the presumption that everybody deserves a defense, right? And that everybody deserves the right to present a case. And similarly, I use the same approach here, which is what is best for the credit unions, right? Like for the system. There are things that obviously I will not agree, but it is not about me. It is about who we represent. And in this case, I represent close to 160 credit unions, right? So I have to do what is best for them, right? And that sometimes do not align. But I think for us, it's all about, number one, reaching consensus. Number two, communicating clearly to our members. And number three, I think, and this is the most important one, engagement. This is why you have to be in the conversation, and you have to talk to people that perhaps do not agree with your view of the world. That's the only way that you can get things done, right? Otherwise, um, not talking is not really a solution to anything, right? Like if you don't solve anything by not talking, you have to talk to others, and oftentimes it's talking to others. For me, I would say it's also a little bit easier than for my colleagues because, my full congressional delegation and my state house are blue. So I get to basically lobby one party. I think for people like Anthony, or even Irma, right, in California, is more challenging because they have to engage with both party and they have to engage on the principle of what is best for the credit union, right, as a whole. But I think ultimately this is not about us as an individual. This is about the industry, right? It is about the credit union. It is about the movement. So that's my approach.
For me, I would say that in California, I have a ranking Republican who is a champion and advocate for CDFIs. Granted, their efforts may not align completely to the ideals of their respective caucus, but I think what the average person does not understand is when you are introducing federal legislation, you need a co-sponsor on both sides of the aisle. If you're introducing any type of bill, from the most progressive to the most moderate to the most conservative, you always have to have two sides of the aisle agreeing to introduce said legislation. And so for myself, it's about being able to share the message, to be able to bring them in, tour a local credit union branch, be able to have a roundtable conversation with CDFI designated credit unions in my state, and emphasize the message because oftentimes it's the staff that you have to be able to talk to and say, hey, look, in said House Financial Services Committee, this amendment may potentially get introduced. Here's the language that we already have prepared for you. It's about being ready at all helms to be able to support the need of our efforts, as my colleagues have stated already.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just being able to, mentally separate, what are my personal beliefs and feelings about something versus what is part of our mission as the credit union industry. And, from the league perspective, we are always seeking to reach consensus on our positions on different policy issues as they come up. These decisions aren't made in a vacuum. We've got legislative committees, we've got, engaged members at our associations that provide feedback on policy proposals, and we look at those through the lens of the industry. And so when we're looking at these issues, we have to set aside, well, the sponsor may have felt a certain way on a certain, maybe a social issue that we don't agree with. We have to be able to set that aside and sort of be laser focused on the issue that impacts the industry, and then taking a position on that issue and effectively communicating on that issue. And then, sort of understanding and acknowledging that we might not agree on everything, but just that ability to separate and to, from a professional perspective, laser focus on what is good, and what will be helpful in moving the industry forward. That's always the objective. How are we going to be able to serve more individuals and communities? How are we going to be able to meet the needs of our members? And so from that perspective, that's where we really want to ensure engagement and alignment. And each of us here on the call today, we have different opinions and perspectives on different issues that come up. But at the end of the day, when we're all looking through the credit union lens, what a beautiful thing it is to say, well, we can all agree as to how this will impact credit unions. And, we all strive to be sure that we're doing what's right for the industry that enables credit unions to serve the members that need financial products and services. So I understand it's a lot and it's heavy, right? It's because you're thinking, well, I really don't agree with someone on this one particular topic. But if they're with me on another topic, we need to leverage that for the collective benefit of the industry as well. So
And actually,
it's not
if I may
easy.
very, very quickly,
Yeah.
on that point, which is there is also an opportunity here, which is credit unions are very bipartisan, right? They enjoy bipartisan support. So it depends also how you argue, right? To the merit of the argument. And you can argue on both sides. But one of the things that I find really neat and cool about our job is that we enjoy bipartisan support. So in fact, when there is a bill that is being introduced, I oftentimes work with other colleagues in other associations to find bipartisan sponsor. I'll give you one. Let your guy work with my guy, and let's get this moving. That's something that doesn't really happen with other industries, and I think we also have to um, examine ourselves and understand that that's an advantage that we have over other industry, and we need to preserve that because that's very unique. I mean, in these times, it's very unique, right, as a system,
Mhm.
right? But also, it is very unique for credit unions because at the end of the day, it's about people helping people. And people do not have labels, right? Like it's just people, right? Like we all have these financial needs, and it doesn't matter whether you are red or blue, you still have the same needs. So, um, anyway, just wanted to mention that the bipartisan element of our industry.
Oh, absolutely. It's so unique. It's so wonderful to be able to work with both sides of the aisle when you're working toward the common goal of credit union advancement. It is a unique opportunity. So thank you for pointing that out. We're really dovetailing right into our next question here, which is kind of digging into advocacy and the perspectives and perceptions of what advocacy is, and some of the misconceptions. And so the question here for the group is, what are common misconceptions that credit union professionals have about advocacy or league work? And then how do we reframe advocacy as mission aligned rather than like intimidating or off-putting or anything that sort of has a negative connotation? How do we reframe that and really become focused on the mission?
So I would say when it comes to what are some common misconceptions from credit union professionals, that the work is I'll say is challenging. It can be I'll say kind of daunting. Like what is this? Like what is advocacy? I'll even speak for myself when I first kind of came on, started really advocating for credit unions. I kept hearing this word advocacy and like what does it truly mean? So I think first getting behind that veil and understanding that advocacy is nothing more than telling your and sharing your credit union story, right? The great work that the credit unions are doing day in day out, things that a lot of us may feel is just kind of like running the mill. Hey, yeah, I lent to somebody who had lower than a 625 credit score, but I did five of them last week, right? We think that that's just kind of commonplace, but we don't really understand in the grand scheme of things like how unique that is for what we do. So that's the one common misconception, that advocacy is this big scary word, and that is something like you have to have a degree to do, when it's really more than just storytelling and educating our those I'll say policymakers on what credit unions do. And so when you start to see that, that is going to get it more mission aligned, because once again we're serving the underserved, we're helping people, and that to me is what put it in perspective. For me, I'll say even coming into this side.
I would add that everybody comes from something, right? Everybody has a path, everybody has a story, everybody has a cause that they care about. For me, it was being emboldened at 21, discovering this diagnosis that my father had, and stopping at anything to ensure that I was his patient advocate, that our family was a team, and being able to drop him off at chemo appointments and recognizing that there were challenges with insurance coverage and those pieces. We are all advocates. Those stories, when policymakers hear them, it may not seem like it matters, but it does. And I can say that having been a former staffer, it goes a long way. I can't tell you how many individuals I would meet that were having challenges with being able to retrieve their veterans benefits, Korean War veterans that served alongside my grandpa who still had shrapnel in their face 40 plus years later, that were just advocating for their basic $100 pension benefit that they were supposed to receive, right? I mean, it's, I could go through so many stories, but ultimately it is not, it shouldn't be approached as something scary or uh, concerning, because at the end of the day, it's simply our democratic process that is still a lifeline in this country.
I would say three things in terms of misconception. Number one, that advocacy, it's kind of a waste of time. Number two, that, you know, because it's a waste of time, we don't really have to invest in relationship. And number three, and I think far more important, and I think this is a lot of my Latinos here can relate, and which is imposter syndrome. The On the first one, advocacy, it is key for credit unions, right? Like we have to fight for our movement. We have to fight for our industry. If we don't do it, then who, right? We have, the bankers on the other side are fighting very hard. We're never going to have enough resources, but we have something far better, which is our stories, right? The challenge that I always face with my members is not that they should tell the story, but how to tell the story, right? And how, and Ashley was alluding to the skill, right, of telling the story, right? But also being intentional about that story, starting with the individual. Why are we doing this kind of work? But also, what's the goal for the credit union as well? So it certainly helped. We just came out of GAC, and in the last year we have been engaging with two members of Congress that were for interchange, and we actually not surprisingly, because we have done the work. We saw a change in heart, right, and in their support. Now they're waiting to learn more. That's a great position for me to have, because that's someone that is not supporting something against credit union. The second thing, not investing in relationship. Everything about this business is about relationship. And that, I mean, within the credit union or the advocacy, people do business with people they like. So you have to put the time, you have to relate to people, and you have to make it very human. How can I help you? How can I be helpful? These are things that we can help your constituents. This is the kind of work that we're doing. We gotta brag a little bit more, of the work that we do. Sometimes credit union people are too humble. But the reality is that our superpower is our stories. And finally, imposter syndrome, something that I suffered. Um, if we're not at the table, we're not bringing those voices. If we're not in the table, we're not representing our families, our relatives. Every person here had someone in their past that worked very, very hard for you to be at this point. In my case, it was my mom, right? And my dad also, right? Like they worked very hard so I could have all these opportunities. I don't want to disappoint them, right? Like they make that effort. And I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to that, right? I'm a Puerto Rican guy living in Boston representing 4 states in front of Congress and state houses, right? My job is to bring CEOs to meeting with members of Congress in many ways, right? And it is a very humbling experience, but it's someone that give me purpose every day. I always tell my members, I'm gonna work to be the best advocate that you're gonna have. And I don't take that lightly. And the point that I'm trying to make is if I'm not there, then who? If I'm not bringing that voice, then who? So it is scary, but it is not impossible. Get over it, and you have to advocate. Engage is my goal.
Yes, I love that. I think you all have done a good job covering most of what was on my mind, but I might add just a couple of things about the misconceptions. I think first of all, it can feel overwhelming, right? I mean, you all are doing your jobs every day, and I'm sure that you're really busy just trying to get through your normal workload. So then when you think about putting advocacy on top of that, it feels like, how am I ever gonna add that to my plate? Um, there are small steps that you can take, and there are ways that you can engage with your league on advocacy that are meaningful, that are helpful without it taking over your life. So don't think it's an all or nothing. There are ways to be engaged to the extent that you're able to be that will still be so helpful to what we're doing. So whatever effort you can put forth is welcome, and it's enough, and you can always build on that. The other thing I think that people shy away from advocacy because it feels too partisan. And partisan politics is not inviting or welcoming. It's a situation that a lot of people could say, I don't want anything to do with that. I'm just going to do my job and not worry about that advocacy angle on things. Because sometimes it feels like there are very extreme positions and things out there, and maybe you don't feel like you want to align with the things you're hearing in the media. But it's not that. Credit union advocacy is not that. Credit union advocacy is in the middle, and it is mission aligned, and it is bipartisan, and it is the perfect place to start building your advocacy skills. So I would just welcome you to think more about that and reflect on how you can build, taking small steps into building upon the advocacy skill set. The other thing I want to add that I think is a misconception is that I think people feel like in order to be an effective advocate, you need to be an expert in things. And I don't think that's true at all. There are experts on these various topics that we're talking about. And so just starting to find your voice and find your place in advocacy, you will find the resources you need to learn more when you need to learn more. Or sometimes it's a matter of saying, I don't know the answer to that, but Anthony does, and I'll connect you with Anthony. So it's just a matter of building your network and understanding where the resources and the expertise lies in case you need to point someone. If you're talking to a lawmaker and they've got a more specific question than you can answer, that's no problem. That's no problem at all. You can point them in the right direction, or you can revisit the conversation if you need to gather more information. So you know more than you think you know, and you don't have to be an expert to be a great advocate. So I think that those are important things to keep in mind. Talking about credit union professionals that might be newer to the advocacy arena, what are some meaningful ways for them to get involved that don't require being an expert?
Show up. I'll say, things like this, forums like this, the more that you have an opportunity to engage with those things that are advocacy, the better it's going to help you to understand. It's almost like, I'll say, kind of riding a bike, or our advocacy is a fire, right? The closer you get to it, the warmer that you feel, but you first have to be willing to step towards the fire. And so this is one way that you can actually step towards that fire. You'll see credit union days at the capitals. You have GAC, Government Affairs Conference in DC. The more that you, once again, you just show up to these events, you're going to be like a sponge. You're going to start hearing all the acronyms that are out here, in credit union land. You're going to learn about the policies and the legislation that's going on, and you'll begin to have that confidence about yourself that one day you will be in a meeting with a legislator, and you'll be empowered, to share that story in an effective way, because you understand the impact that it's having to the member, and you understand ultimately what resonates with that legislator. So show up, and that's half the battle.
I would add coordinating events with the local offices of your respective elected official, be it on the state side or the federal side. If it means engaging the league, making them aware, hey, we're going to host a fraud scam stopper event at blah 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 senior center. That goes a long way. If you have the capability to coordinate localized programming with your credit union as a means to help engage your local policymaker, and you find it in your heart to be able to coordinate something of that matter, that it means a lot.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, do that exercise of what motivates you to do the work that you're doing, right? I think that's extremely important, because it gives you those assurances, right? To feel confident to start engaging and showing up, right? So do that exercise. Two, reach out to people like Anthony, like Irma, like me, like Ashley, like people at LCUP, because there is a lot of resources in this industry. So you like Ashley was saying, you don't have to be a subject matter expert, but guess what? You're a credit union expert because you're doing the work, right? So use that lens, right? Like, I'm an expert. I'm doing this work, right? Like I probably know this work better than the staffer on the other side representing, an elected official. So use that to your advantage. And then I would say practice, right? Like this is not natural. I wouldn't say that this is natural for any person in this conversation. You have to practice, right? And part of on practicing is practice on forums that you're feeling very comfortable. I think this is a good opportunity for LCUP, right? To get us all together to talk about these issues because we're familiar, right? Like we're in like-minded people, right? Like that we're working towards helping our members and having that perspective that we're doing everything for our members. I think that's key. So again, start with your introspection. Why are you doing the work that you're doing? Because I think that's gonna be the motivating factor. And also it's actually fun, I find it fun. Every time I see Irma and Anthony, it's like I'm seeing my buddies, we're hanging out, it can be fun too, right? Like you can find people that are very passionate, and I think that's every time I feed into Anthony's and into Irma's passion for the work that they're doing, that makes me better too, right? Because then I go back and I say, oh, I got friends in California, I got friends in Louisiana that care about the same thing I'm caring. So get involved, engage. I think that's key.
Yeah, I agree. And it can be different depending on, where you're sitting today, what your role is, who your peers are, who your mentor is, but also just, doing doing that self-reflection and thinking about the why are we doing this, how involved can I be, how involved do I want to be, and how can I build on this interest in advocacy. I think part of that too is just letting people know, right? I mean, let your credit union peers know that this is something you're interested in and you're willing to commit to. The credit unions and the movement, we love engaging people on advocacy, but we need to know who wants to engage as well. So, if you're just sitting there and you're doing your job, but nobody knows that you want to elevate your advocacy role, you're going to have a harder time getting that help and support to do more, to be more involved, and to learn about the other events that are going on and things like that. So I would just say, at the right opportunity, express your desire to be more engaged in advocacy, and let your superiors know at your credit union that you are looking for opportunities, because they might hear about opportunities that you haven't heard about. They might know about experiences like crashers at GAC. They might be able to help plug you into opportunities to learn more about advocacy. And so just kind of making that commitment to yourself that you're going to do this, and then also making it known, hey, I'm putting myself out there. I'm behind the mission of what we're doing, and I'm ready to engage and take it to the next level. You will get the support you need. It's out there in many different levels, right? At the or at the league level, internally at credit unions, at the national level, we are welcoming people with open arms to come join our advocacy efforts. So I think you'll find out about many more opportunities by expressing that willingness to step up as well. Talking about sort of league engagement and the league opportunities, what does intentional engagement with a league look like beyond just attending a meeting or responding to an action alert? But for those that want to really engage at a deeper level, what does that look like?
I think Irma already spoke to it, those community events that you're able to invite legislators from, if we're looking at it through an advocacy lens. Yeah, the meet and greets that are able to be hosted at credit unions, like I said, programming that coincides with, an issue. Like I said, we're talking about fraud and you're doing a fraud and scams, with seniors, that we can invite legislators to. But anything that gets our policymakers in the doors of credit unions to really, once again, get that peek behind the veil, I say is a deeper level of engagement. Not us just going and attending their events or their fundraisers, but them actually coming and seeing the work that credit unions do.
I would even add, Ashley, the ties to unions. For my state in California, if there is a credit union that has deep ties to a union of some sort, for example, right now with the TSA employees being furloughed, we have a credit union that services the TSA employees that has relation with the AFL-CIO in our state. And that goes a great length to be able to call upon that credit union and check in and say, hey, what is needed? How can we be of support at this time? And so I think those are the elements in the matter of urgency or even crises, right? Because we're going now beyond the 6 weeks that local folks who benefit from credit union banking with credit unions are, don't have a paycheck at the moment.
Yeah, Irma, you brought me actually to a point too. It's
Yes.
another thing too that any relationships that our credit unions may already have, right? That I'll say us on this call may not have, right? Sometimes it is the league building that bridge, to that legislator, but sometimes our members built that bridge to us. So I
Right.
would say that's another deeper one. So if you already have, if said policymaker legislator comes in, every day and you have this relationship, well, hey, yes, we would love to be there, by chance. I'll say on
Mhm.
the day that they come by and you can make that introduction. So yeah, I do like that as well, Irma. The relationships that we can get access to is greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and along those lines, oh, sorry, Adrian.
sorry, no, I was gonna say intentional engagement means every opportunity that you can exercise leadership is intentional engagement. And let me explain it very quick. If and to using Anthony's point, if you have that relationship, then bring that relationship to the table. If you have a policy proposal, then communicate that policy proposal. Very recently at GAC, I had a couple of members who are concerned about loan maturities. Guess what? That was brought at the table. Why? Because they show up and because they convey the necessity for serving their members. So intentional engagement means every opportunity that you can exercise leadership.
Absolutely. Um, I think also thinking about this in terms of being able to engage policymakers, even if it's not issue specific. So I'm going to give you an example. Your credit union has a member appreciation event. Invite local lawmakers. You have a shred day. Lawmakers love to partner on shred days and offer that as a constituent service. So engage in ways outside of just sort of advocacy alerts when action is necessary. So even if we don't have a bill before us that we're asking them to support or oppose or take some sort of action on, take some steps toward engaging and networking with them and building that relationship, because there will be a point in time when you can leverage that relationship, and it would be a wonderful thing to be able to say, I know that person. I worked with that lawmaker. We co-hosted a shred day, or we invited them to an event and they stopped by the credit union. So sort of engaging on the front end before you have an ask will also, help put you in a good position of having built that relationship early on. And so I think that's really important. And then, you mentioned one thing as well with policy proposals. I think one way that I really appreciate our members being involved is helping to think of the ideas of ways that we can improve the environment for credit unions. So maybe in your role, you see something that just doesn't make sense, or something that could improve the member experience or improve the offerings that you can provide to your members. Speak up. And the leagues are willing to work through those ideas as well, to think about, is there red tape that could be removed, or is there something we can propose that would make life easier for you or your credit union member. So just, in general, be willing to speak up, to step in, to decide that you're willing to take on this advocacy work, and then you're going to position yourself in a spot to be a resource to us, just like we could be a resource to you as well. All right. How can credit unions and leagues strategically engage in advocacy during pivotal moments to advance equitable outcomes for the communities they serve?
I think an example of that, in my experience so far, has been preserving our tax exemption status and being able to share that messaging collectively. We led a grassroots campaign via email to all credit unions that are existing members within our traders, our league. Um, and the messaging wasn't just provided in English, it was also provided in Spanish to credit union members so that anyone who banked with the credit union understood this is at risk, this is at stake. Please make sure that you're able to convey the importance of preserving this status and what it means to you as a credit union member. And it worked. It helped immensely with engagement for our local delegation of elected officials. And so for me, it's about being able to activate in a moment's notice, leveraging platforms or tools that help, like whether it's like a MailChimp or some type of a e-blast that can help sort of convey what needs to be shared when there is something urgent that does come up.
I agree with that. And a lot of times on our messaging, it is the volume of response that lawmakers get that sort of helps them prioritize, the level of interest in an issue.
Right.
And so if we've got something that is really important that might be happening in an hour, and you get a message from your league to take some sort of action, oftentimes we've got that set up in a way that is easy and convenient for you to respond. So just the volume with which a legislator hears from the industry, and they might be able to go into a committee and say, well, I just got 1,000 slips opposed to this issue from the credit union industry. We need to pause and take a closer look at something. And that really, really helps our efforts legislatively when we're working on an issue, just to be able to show the volume of interest from the industry in something like that.
I actually like this question because this question sort of like sum up all the previous question, right? Like if you think about it, strategically pivotal moments. And I will go back to the first point about the league being a bridge orchestrating, but also in order for us to be strategic, we gotta engage, right? Like nothing beat that local relationship. And this is why it's so important and so crucial that people attending this webinar are engaging locally because nothing beat that power. I'm sorry, there is nothing that beat that local political connection, right? So in order for us to be strategic in pivotal moments, people like me, like Anthony, all of us, we will go back to that local connections, particularly if we have to sway a member, for instance, a member of Congress that it is in a key committee. Most likely, that's going to be the sway, right? That's going to be the determinative factor in changing their position. So this is why it is impetus for all of us to continually engage, to be active, to build those relationships, because what is certain is that the political landscape is going to flip, it's going to shift. And if you don't have those established relationships, then we're scrambling. Then we're like, oh, what is it that we're going to do? So the moment is now. Spring training is now. There is a midterms are coming up, right? At least at the national level, but there is election happening all over. And I think what's important, going back to all those previous questions, is that in order for us, for the league and LCUP and all the stakeholders to engage, it goes back to the individual at the local level. And that is an ongoing exercise. And that doesn't need to be political in terms of all the time reaching out to your state rep or senator, but it has to be intentional in the sense on how you're serving your community, keeping the data, keeping the stories, making sure that you have those stories already framed so they are ready to go. Making sure that you're calling those offices. Hey, how you doing? Can we grab coffee? I just want to learn more about the work. Let me tell you what we're doing in your community. your constituents, your voter that happen to be my members. So this is a good sum up, as I was saying. And my call to everybody on this webinar, and what I always tell my members, you have to engage. You have to be intentional because there will be, trust me, there will be a point in which you're going to get a call from me saying, hey, your credit union is in this district. This is a very important legislator. We need to engage that person. And the entryway, oftentimes the best entryway is through that local connection.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Adrian. One thing I've always learned from these panels is talk before Adrian. But no, it really goes hand in hand, right? The great thing about the work that we do is it's very rarely things are just sprung up to us, at the last minute. A lot of things are kind of a built up, build up, to I'll say that call to action moment. So, the strategy, of course, mate. Your league is going to know best what the strategy is for your legislators. But like Adrian said, it's that consistent and constant engagement all along the way at every opportunity, right? Before you actually need something, right? It's that engagement that you have with that member that's really going to make the difference when you do need that member to vote no, or help you to keep credit union, the tax exempt status out of there, to keep CCCA off the table, on a federal level, right? It's gonna be about the work that we did before. And I mean, even for us, even your local legislators become your statewide legislators become your federal. So it's very important, like Adrian mentioned, hey, to build that relationship when they're on the school board, when they're, in the local jurisdiction, than it is when they're in DC. And now you're trying to, just introduce yourself, as the credit union person. So that is all a part of being strategically engaged, and you have to start it from the beginning, because you can't just wait to the end to try to get the desired outcome.
Yeah. And I think one of the most impactful and powerful things we can do, and also one of the easiest things we can do, is just simply tell our stories. Tell your story of what your credit union is doing, how it's serving your community, how it's serving members. Tell the unique stories. I think we all have some sort of story about, a member that wasn't able to be served by a larger institution that came to the credit union for help, or the individual that came to the credit union for a credit building tool that allowed them to eventually get a mortgage loan. Tell those stories, because that's what really, in the minds of lawmakers, then, when they have legislation coming before them that might impact financial institutions, they're thinking then of that story you told about how you helped one of their constituents, and just, those stories that we have, that differentiate us. And I know one of the questions in the chat earlier was about how do we differentiate our industry from banks. And I think we have a million ways to do that. We just need to be better sometimes about bragging on ourselves. And the industry certainly has no shortage of those stories and those examples of how we serve where others won't, or how we serve on more favorable terms, how we are really the financial institutions that embody people helping people. We are out there to serve our members and serve the best interests of their constituents. And so the earlier we start telling those stories, the better. And that is truly a powerful thing to be able to share with lawmakers that then, impacts these policy decisions that might come later down the road. So, wow, that hour and a half flew by, at least from my perspective. That was really an engaging conversation. I really appreciate the panelists and the perspectives that you were able to offer. And I hope that the attendees all learned a little something today. And if you have follow-up, you can feel free to reach out to any of us. I know we're all happy to continue talking about the importance of advocacy, and happy to help engage those of you that are interested in learning more, or that might have a question after we get off this call. But thank you so much for joining us on this panel, and I appreciate the opportunity to moderate it.
Thank you so much, everyone. Ashley, Anthony, Irma, Adrian, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and your time. We truly appreciate it. And I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.